What if I told you that you can build powerful Salesforce automation without writing a single line of code? Yes, you heard that right. You can create business logic, update records, collect information from users, and automate processes visually using Salesforce Flow. In this video, I'm going to explain Salesforce Flow from the basics, including the different types of flows, flow builder, before save and after save flows, and some important best practices. So let's get started. Welcome to the Salesforce Flow Masterclass. The main idea of this video is simple. How can we build powerful business automation without writing traditional code? The answer is Salesforce Flow. So if you are a Salesforce admin, aspiring Salesforce developer, business analyst, or someone preparing for Salesforce interviews, this is an important concept to understand. The presentation includes Salesforce Flow as a way to build business logic visually without writing code. What is Salesforce Flow? Now let's answer the most important question. What is Salesforce Flow? Salesforce Flow is a declarative automation tool. In simple words, declarative means we can create automation using configuration instead of writing traditional programming code. With flows, we can build complex logic, collect information from users, and work with Salesforce data visually. Think about it like creating a flowchart. You decide what starts the process, what should happen next, what condition should we check, and finally, what action should Salesforce perform. That's the basic idea behind Flow. The slide describes Flow as a declarative automation engine for building logic, collecting user input, and manipulating data visually. Four building blocks of Flow. Now that we understand that Flow is what Flow is, let's look at the building blocks. We mainly have flow elements and flow resources. Flow elements are the things we place on the flow canvas to perform actions. For example, we can use screens to interact with users, decisions to decisions to check conditions, assignments to change values, and loops to process multiple records. We also have data operations such as get records, create records, update records, and delete records. Then we have flow resources. These can store information while the flow is running. For example, we can have variables, formulas, constraints, constants, and collections. So an easy way to remember this is elements perform the work. Resources hold or provide the data needed for that work. The slide specifically lists interaction logic, data, variables, formulas, or constants, and collections as the core building blocks. Visual automation part. Now, this is where Salesforce Flow becomes really interesting. This is the Flow Builder canvas. Instead of writing a lot of code, we can visually build our business logic step by step. Imagine you're creating a workflow, a flowchart. You add one element, then connect it to another element, then add a decision, then another action. This allows us to visually understand how our automation works. The slide also highlights the move away from legacy workflow rules and process building toward modern flow-based automation. So if you're learning Salesforce today, Flow is a very important automation technology to understand. This slide describes Flow Builder as a drag and drop interface for modeling business logic and presents Flow as the modern alternative to legacy workflow rules and process building. 5 types of Salesforce flows. Now let's talk about the different types of Salesforce flows. The slide highlights 3 of the main types. First, we have the screen flow. Screen flow is used when we need interaction from the user. For example, we can create a step-by-step form that asks the user for information. Second, we have record flow. This runs automatically when a record is created, updated, or deleted. The user doesn't have to manually start it. Third, we have scheduled trigger flow. This allows automation to run at a scheduled time or recurring interval. For example, we could have an automation that runs regularly against a set of records. So simple way to remember them is screen flow is user interaction. Record flow is where the record changes. Scheduled triggered flow is where the scheduled automation begins. These definitions follow the descriptions on slide 5. Screen versus record triggered flow. Now let's look at one of the most important comparisons. Screen flow versus record triggered flow. The biggest difference is user interaction. A screen flow needs the user to interact with it. For example, the user might enter information into a form. A record triggered flow works in the background. It automatically runs when a record meets the configure triggered action conditions. So imagine a Salesforce user creates a case. A screen flow would be like asking the user questions through a guided screen. A record triggered flow would be like Salesforce saying, the case was created, now I'll automatically perform these actions. That's the difference. Screen flow is equal to interactive. Record triggered flow is equal to automatic and behind the scenes. This slide explicitly contrasts interactive screen flows with background record triggered flows and gives guided case logging and cross-object updates as example use case. Automation tool comparison. Now you might be wondering, why do we need Flow when Salesforce already had workflow rules and process builder? This slide gives us the answer. The answer. Salesforce Flow provides capabilities that the older tools do not provide in the same way. For example, Flow can support interactive screens. It can perform delete record actions. It can handle complex loop logic. It can support high performance before save field updates. So Flow gives us a much broader automation capability. That's one reason Flow has become so important for Salesforce professionals. The comparison with Matrix on slide 7 shows these capabilities across workflow rules, process builder, and Salesforce. Performance and automation impact. Now let's talk about performance. One of the key points on this slide is the advantage of before save record triggered flows for updating fields on the triggering record. The slide highlights a 10x faster execution comparison in this context. Why? Because before save flows can update fields before the record is committed, avoiding additional save and DML overhead described on the slide. The important takeaway is do not just build a flow that works, build a flow that works efficiently. And when you are designing automation, performance matters. The 10x figure and its explanations are stated directly on slide 8. Flow architecture best practices. Now let's talk about some important flow best practices. Number 1, bulkify your data operations. Avoid putting get records, create records, or update records directly inside a loop. Why? Because doing this repeatedly, repeatedly can create performance problems and contribute to hitting Salesforce partner limits. Number 2, use before, save, or for same record updates. If you are simply changing fields on the record that triggered the flow, before save is the recommended approach shown here. Number 3, use fault paths. If something goes wrong, do not allow the process to fail silently. Use fault paths to handle errors and provide appropriate notifications or error handling. And finally, one flow per trigger type per object. Keeping automation organized makes the overall architecture easier to understand and maintain. These four practices are listed in slide. Record execution order lifecycle. This is extremely important if you're working with record triggered flows. Let's understand the best sequence shown here. Step 1. Initial save. The record is initialized and the system validation runs. Step 2. Before save. The before save flow can quickly update fields on the triggering record. Step 3. Database connect. The record is written to the database and the next validation steps occur. Step 4. After save. Now we can perform actions such as updating related records or sending emails. So remember this simple idea. Before save is mainly for the fast updates to the triggering record. After save is useful when we need actions involving related records or other actions after the save. The four-step lifecycle shown here is the initial save, before save, DB, commit, and after save. The power of declarative technology. Now let's take a step back. Why is Salesforce Flow so powerful? Because it gives Salesforce admins capabilities that can handle complex business logic without requiring them to write traditional code. Think about that. You can visually design automation, you can work with records, you can create decisions, you can automate processes, and you can build sophisticated business logic. This is the real part of declarative technology. You don't always need to start with code. Sometimes the right configuration can solve the business requirement. This slide summarizes this as a giving Salesforce admins developer grade capabilities without writing code. And that's a quick introduction of Salesforce Flow Masterclass. Today we learned what Salesforce Flow is and the core flow building blocks, flow builder, different types of flows, screen flow versus record triggered flow, automation tool comparisons, performance considerations, flow best practices, and record triggered flow execution order. If you have any questions about Salesforce Flow or Salesforce admin concepts, drop your question in the comments below. And if you found this video helpful, do not forget to like the video, subscribe to Salesforce Chronicles, and share it with someone learning Salesforce. I'll see you in the next video. The final slide specifies the questions which you can ask. So if you have any questions, you can drop in the comment section.